Disclaimer. Please note the details provided below are true. These are real events that occurred, and some persons may find their graphic content disturbing and should therefore see it with caution. This report describes violence to children and is of some of the most gruesome content ever covered by the team. The true accounts were extracted from numerous face-to-face interviews throughout multiple slums across India to attain a comprehensive view of the timeline of events. Mumbai, a tale of horror and exploitation. The Puppet Master, or Kathaputalee Maastar as he's known locally in India, is one of the most horrific serial killers of all time. The brutality of the killings, as well as the lack of convictions, means the residents of Mumbai hold this monster in a similar regard that the Whitechapel residents of 1800s London held a certain Jack the Ripper. The Puppet Master is not thought to be a man, but a monster. The police have never paid him any attention, with the information of this case largely deriving from qualitative data and first-hand interviews. It was the summer of 2000. The temperatures in Mumbai were at a sweltering 40°C. Mumbai itself is India's most populous city and the third most densely populated city in the world. Out of the millions that live in Mumbai, a large proportion are forced to live in slums, shacks and dirt floors that are a struggle for any family to live in, let alone one of 10+ people, such as the family that Arav Bhatt was a part of. Arav was born in the early 90s as the 8th child in the Bhatt family. They grew up in a small shanty hut in South Mumbai, and like many of the children in the area, Arav had to learn to fend for himself at an early age. Arav and many of the other street kids would roam the city through the day and head back towards the slums at night to be reunited with their families. School was no option. No. It was a day like any other. The 10-year-old Arav and his friends had headed into the city to a local underpass to have a game of cricket. The underpass was located below one of the city's largest highways bridges and provided the children with a shelter from the sun and an open space for them to play cricket. The children had begun playing when the ball went over a fence and out of sight. Arav volunteered to retrieve it. One of the last decisions he would ever make. When Arav didn't return a few minutes after he disappeared behind the fence, his friends began to panic. They searched for him thoroughly, but ultimately returned to the slums without Arav that night. Arav's mother was naturally heartbroken, but with 9 other children to care for, she could not spare the time to look for Arav herself. That was until he returned just under a year later. But he was different. You can imagine the thrill and joy of Arav's mother when on her walk to the local market. A little boy was sat against the wall. Her little boy. She rejoiced and threw her arms around Arav, shouting that her boy had been returned to her. But he was cold and not moving. Upon further inspection of her son, she found his eyes were no longer the dark brown like hers. They were a pale blue now. She screamed as when she put him back down against the wall he was sat against, his body slumped over, his new, lifeless, pale blue eyes still staring straight ahead. He was dead. But he wasn't just dead. When examined by the local doctor, the story goes that Arav's organs and innards had been expertly removed. They had been replaced with cotton wool, with the only clue being the scar on his back where the procedure would have taken place. His skin had been embalmed with some sort of oil to preserve its likeness and not to rot, with his eyes also being replaced with fake glass ones. This is the first known case of the Puppet Master. It's unclear who gave him his name, but this is the origin of it. For the next 2 years, the Puppet Master would do the exact same thing to children like Arav. They'd be playing sports under a bypass bridge, selling goods at the side of the road or waiting for the bus to take them home. Then they'd vanish and appear months later as one of the puppets. All of those are real examples of what 6 children were doing when they vanished. Then came Priya. Priya's last name cannot be revealed upon her instruction, and understandably so. That is because Priya was the first of the Puppet Master's victims to escape. Priya was 17 at the time of the attack in 2002. She was working at a gas station by the Mumbai highway. It was a day like any other. She had to deal with creepy men a lot in her customer service role. But the man she saw today was different. Usually the men that tried to flirt with her or made her feel uncomfortable were fat married men away from their wives. But this guy was different. He was older and had only a few long gray hairs on his head. He had small rectangular glasses. The man got out of his car, which she notes as being a more luxurious 4x4 Jeep type of car, juxtaposing his appearance, and approached her. He came to her with a toothless grin and asked if she'd like to see a magic trick. It should also be noted that Priya mentions she's always looked young for her age, that many people have mistook her for a child in the past. Priya declined to see the magic trick, but the man began to pull a pack of cards from his sleeve anyway. He began aimlessly shuffling them around before dropping them, spilling them all over the floor next to his car. That was when the man quickly reached into his pocket again, this time pulling a long needle out. He attempted to plunge the needle into Priya at a speed a lot faster than he was moving at before, but Priya was faster. The man fled the scene, and Priya soon after alerted the authorities. This man is whom many began to theorize the puppet master was. A sick, demented old man that would lure children in with magic tricks and turn them into his puppets. And that could possibly be correct, aside from a small few factors. The thing with urban legend is that rumors can turn into fact. The immaterial can become material. But in this case, the cold reality of what was really happening in Mumbai was far more tragic and horrifying than one demented old man could be. Arav was not turned into a puppet that day he was kidnapped. Arav was turned into a street beggar. The rumors of Arav's pale blue eyes were likely true, but not because they'd been replaced with glass eyes, but because of the scarring of the tissue after he was intentionally blinded to appear more vulnerable to wealthy American tourists, to be able to line the pockets more of his captors. The scar on his back was not to replace his insides with cotton, but to steal his organs that would be sold to the highest bidder. This is what most likely happened to all of the children taken by the puppet master. They were merely a means to pay the bills of a sick freak. After he was done with them, they'd be cast back to the streets where he found them. This also explained the locations of all of the victims' disappearances. They were all by roads, mainly the highway. This allowed the Jeep of the puppet master to park up and make a quick getaway after luring one of his victims in with a card trick and sedating them with a needle. Concluded the case of the puppet master of Mumbai. The police would not look into it further because of corruption or lack of funding. Either way, the puppet master was never caught. And that's if there was only one puppet master. Dozens of gangs around Mumbai put these exact same practices into play to make street children their beggars, to make money from them. The only slight consolation of this specific case is that one of the puppet masters of Mumbai, whoever the man with the glasses driving the Jeep was, will think again before harming another child when he looks at the hideous scar blinding him in his left eye.